Hello, I'm Dr. Duke with the New American, and this is my take on the news. Well, we had our first debate between Bernie and Biden, and I want to talk about that. I mean, obviously, Bernie Sanders' days are numbered. He's been kneecapped by his own party, basically, the Democrats. And this is the thing about Bernie Sanders. He's kind of straddled the line the last 20, 30 years as an independent. He hasn't wanted to commit, certainly, fully to the Democrat Party, and I think that's what finally did him in. The establishment Democrats rallied the base really quickly and squelched any chance he and his strong support from really young people, all that momentum was ground to a halt. But what I really want to talk about with regards to the debate is the political fallout that we saw a little bit in the debate and that we're going to see over the next 3 or 4 months about the coronavirus. What people are talking about, the physical, the biological consequences, the economic consequences of this, the consequences to our Constitution and the rule of law. But I want to take a kind of a crass step back and let's consider the politics of corona. For 3.5 years, actually longer than that, really 4 years, started about 6 months before Donald Trump became president. Donald Trump has been attacked. He's been lied about. He has been maliciously gossiped about. He's been investigated. His privacy, I believe, and the privacy of many of his cabinet have been violated, all in an attempt to undo a legitimate election. And the one thing that Donald Trump has always been able to do is to keep the economy humming. He's done that with, in spite of the fact that he inherited from Obama, all sorts of problems that were longstanding, going back all the way prior to 9/11. But he put the economy really on a largely solid footing. And so we think about the politics of coronavirus, the Russian investigation, the Ukrainian investigation, impeachment, the Kavanaugh affair. None of those things really lowered his popularity. In fact, impeachment pushed him up to almost 50%, which was as high as Obama was at that time in his quest for a re-election, even a little bit higher. And so now we have the coronavirus, and that virus is ravaging many aspects of the world economy that persons in many, many nations have been affected by. We seem to be at that point in America now where you're beginning to see it grow a little bit, but that's the funny thing. We've known about this for 3 weeks, almost a month. I'm wondering why the numbers aren't growing faster. We're only recently now canceling schools. We're only recently, this very week, last day or two, forbidding people to go to restaurants, that kind of constitutionally questionable behavior. And yet the numbers don't seem to be spiking the way you would imagine they would. We'll see where we are in a month from now. But given how long we have had the virus and how many cases there were a month ago, it's just surprising to me that it hasn't grown more. And human nature being what it does, it begs a question about us politically. Is what's the political component to this? We know for a fact that Democrats see an opening here. Even in the midst of this horrible disease and a country trying to unify to fight this both nationally and in the broader world, we see that the Democrats are going to take out $5 million worth of ads to simply attack Trump on the virus. Now, if this were Republicans doing this, if you had Barack Obama president and you had the Republican caucus spending millions and millions of dollars to try to undercut the preparedness, the attempts of President Obama to unify the country, this would be front page news. It would be a huge act of, they would call it treason. But because it's the Democrats, we don't see this. The Democrats see an opportunity here. We've looked at the Squad, AOC and her group. We've seen the radical leftists in Congress who've gotten together and they've tried to load every bill, every potential rescue bill, every bill that's designed to alleviate the problem in Congress, try to load it up with all sorts of giveaways. Initially, Nancy Pelosi had the temerity to actually try to get federally funded abortion as part of the coronavirus response. We've seen all sorts of pork and giveaways. We've seen all sorts of sops that don't really have a lot to do with coronavirus, just typical pork that's being added onto bills, really shamefully. And in fact, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, actually said, and I quote, "We need to gag on this bill, but to pass it." In other words, we realize how much garbage, how much overspending, how much non-virus related spending, how many wish list items for Democrats have been jammed into this bill. But because, everyone's panicking, we've got to gag on this bill, literally choke on it, but we've got to pass it. Because if we don't pass it, I believe was what McConnell was saying, if we don't pass it, then we will be perceived as holding up the recovery, of holding up the conquest of this disease by holding down the economy. So something that's going to drive us much further into debt, something that's going to weaken sovereignty issues, weaken constitutional approaches to dealing with these things. We have to kind of gag on that, choke on it, and take it for the sake of politics. What does it look like? And I'm afraid to say that Donald Trump, too, is rushing to spend as much money as humanly possible in as many areas as possible to try to make it look like we're doing something. And if Donald Trump has one weakness as president, and I think he's a good president, I'm glad he's president, I'll vote for him again, certainly over any of these Biden or Bernie or whoever they may at the last minute seek to install at the Democratic convention. Nevertheless, if there's one problem I have is it's pretty clear that Donald really likes attention, number one, and he really likes to be loved. He really likes to be appreciated for a man who gets things done. And so he's got everybody screaming in his ear, the entire left, the entire mainstream media, and alarmingly, a large number of Republicans in the Congress and Senate who are screaming in his ear for all of these concessions, for all of these protections, all of this money spent, so that when we go campaigning this summer, particularly those of us who have to get reelected, we can go back to our local cities and states and brag about how much money we secured for our districts, for our states. It really is kind of almost a criminal enterprise how Rahm Emanuel's famous statement, "You never let a crisis go to waste," how both political parties and our president, our Congress, our Senate have given into that idea that what we have to do whenever a crisis appears, wherever there's a moment of national crisis that requires decisive decision-making, what we have to do, it seems to be, regardless of who's in power, which political party, the end game is not the right thing to do, followed by the right constitutional thing to do. It's always what's going to give us the best press. How do we best CYA, cover our butts? How do we use this crisis as a way to be perceived as having done something productive? And that's almost always spending money. It is almost in every instance money, funding, more government handouts, less individual responsibility. I mean, and you think about what's going on. It's the federal government's not behaving right now, and I think that's because Trump's president, nearly as bad as the state governors are. And don't forget, most of your state governors are Republicans. And the fact that they're banning private school attendance, the fact that they're demanding that restaurants, private industries where people are free to walk into or not, are being forced closed by state governors. This is a huge violation of state constitutions, and it's certainly not constitutional on the federal level. And many of these governors who are doing this are Republicans. You've got primaries. You have primaries being in places like Ohio. You've got a governor who a judge said, no, you must go through with the primary. You can't cancel the primary on the very day before the primary. You can't cancel them. Well, the governor said, yes, I can, because I guess I'm the governor. And so he did cancel it. And there seems to be no constitutional blowback in the state of Ohio or nationally for this kind of behavior. So we find ourselves asking ourselves that pivotal question: what is the political fallout? The standard argument is, if the economy rebounds, if this is over, and we start to gain some of what was lost back, Trump's in a good spot for re-election. If, however, this lingers and carries on, and the worst case scenarios happen, the stock market crashed again today. Mnuchin has basically said that it's possible that we will see in the short term up to 20% unemployment because of all these jobs. Ironic, isn't it? The states closed down restaurants. All the people who own restaurants, all the serving staff, all the cooks, now out of work. People who work arenas and college football, basketball games, all the vendors, all those people now are unemployed. That could be a big problem for Donald Trump. And the real tragedy of all of this, interestingly, is they couldn't get him on Ukraine. They couldn't get him on Russia. They couldn't get him on you name it, they couldn't get him. But this virus now, it's like a gift from the gods for the Democrats. And we know that they are not ashamed to use it, to try to jam all of this garbage into our bills at Congress and the Senate, to give all of these giveaways to big government programs, all of this money spent, all of this printing money with nothing really to underwrite it, on top of legendary debt in this country. So Donald Trump is really between a catch-22, right? Even if he gives the Democrats all they want, the virus is still enough, if it doesn't get better, to blame him for all they forced upon him. I'm Dr. Duke with The New American, and this has been my take on the news.